Hi everybody, this is Toffee bringing you part 2 of my FE10 hard mode 100% growth transfers LTC. We enter part 2. Part 1 followed Micaiah the entire way, while part 2 is a bit more disjointed. 2B is a defend map where we need to keep Leanne safe. We now control an entirely different party of units. Marcia is a Falcon Knight and is the primary EXP target on this map. She's the only combat unit who really earns a reasonable amount of EXP from killing the generics on this map. Marcia is our next flyer and she'll be a long-term unit. Something Pegasi have over Wyverns is that the heaviest Lagoos can actually shout them, which is a perk no other mounted units have. Lanthas are weaker than Axes and Ceres have worse strength caps than Dragon Lords, meaning the ceiling on her combat is lower, but being a part 2 unit available for 3 out of 5 maps, including a defend, lets her access a large EXP pool to kickstart her growth. She has access to swords and lances, but I don't think she ever uses swords outside of possibly on one occasion on this map to reduce her damage output. The Lord of this map is Elincia. She's in a tier 3 class, meaning combat EXP is basically non-existent on her and she comes with pretty decent base stats. She uses swords and staves, though right now the only sword we have access to is the Dinky Slim Sword. Being a tier 3 flyer, she has her mastery skill Stun, which is basically a critical hit without requiring pulling Displayed Crit. It also paralyzes the enemy, but we're never going to use that effect. Elincia has really poor availability. She's around for 2 maps in part 2 and then will only show up in part 4. Still, being a flying staffer is very important, as you might imagine, so Elincia is also an EXP target. Since staff EXP is constant regardless of level, Elincia is trained on this map by ensuring she uses Mend at every possible opportunity, and because of how we end up positioning our units, she also bonks a number of enemies with the Mend staff to earn some extra scraps of EXP to just about gain 2 full levels on this map. The next unit under our control is Leanne, the Heron of part 2. While Raphael could dance for 4 units at a time, Leanne is a step down, only being able to dance 2 units who are opposite each across her, so they need to be either above and below or to the left and right of her. In exchange, Leanne can fly and has Canto. Her transformation gives her 6 move. On this map, enemies will not attack Leanne from 2 range because they're programmed to try to 1 range to quote-unquote capture her and then try to escape. We don't want to allow her to get captured because even if we kill the unit capturing her, she cannot act after being dropped, and we want every dance we can get to help train Marcia and Elincia. We maximize Marcia's EXP by ensuring she gets as many rounds of chip combat as we can manage, while still arranging our formations to ensure that Leanne doesn't get captured. While Raphael generally stays safe in this run, Leanne will be in danger a couple of times. The last new unit you see is Lucci the Raven. He started off this map transformed by eating a charge of the Lagoo Stone he comes with. He comes with the Rat skill. Lucci is very dodgy for this point in the game, and he'll play an important role in a new turn save I'll show off later in this video. Thankfully, he doesn't need to do anything combat related after part 2. Lagoo Stones let Lagoos instantly max their gauge and transform in a single action, which is the only way to transform a Lagoo starting with empty gauge turn 1. In this run, I optimized the usage of them down to the bare minimum for full recruitment. Try to guess how many uses I burned through by the end. I should acknowledge something you might have already noticed. This map is an auto-scroller. The clouds move a tile to the left on both player phase and enemy phase, and they're a rare piece of terrain that affects flyers, granting some defense in a void. Part 2 will not give us access to forging, and will not let us reassign skills like we could in part 1. On the subject of forging, I should explain coins, since I forgot to go over them last time. Coins in this game let you apply a random bonus to a forge. The RNG used for coins is seeded at the very start of the game, so the entire sequence of coin results is essentially predetermined. If you know the sequence, you can intentionally burn up coins to ensure that a particular forge gets a particular result. If you wanted to do a run where you wanted to control the results of coins arbitrarily, you'd have to modify the coin result probability table, since as of now we do not know how the coin RNG seeding is handled in memory. Given this, a goal I had for this run was to try and avoid using coins as much as possible to avoid the can of worms that would open, and you'll see that I was successful. Despite the disjointed nature of part 2, it does use a single Bex pool that is separate from the one used by the Dawn Brigade in part 1. I did mention this with Vika earlier, but Ravens have 1 less move than Hawks, the other kind of bird tribe Lagoos that we'll see later in the run. Halfway through the defend map, we get a reinforcement, Haar. Haar is well known to fans of this game as one of the most centralizing units in the whole game, and he certainly will not disappoint in this LTC. He comes with great bases, especially with transfers, and using axes and having a better strength cap means he has much better offensive output. His low speed cap will catch up with him at the very end of the game, but it's just about good enough to let him do whatever he needs to do. Haar comes with the skill cancel. Haar has the best availability of the crew on this map, since he'll show up again early in part 3. While he's still in tier 2, we want him to cap his relevant stats to reduce his EXP requirements to hit his tier 3 caps. This would require gaining 4 levels as tier 2 unit. On this map we only give him the boss skill because he's not going to gain much from the generics compared to Marcia, but he will be an EXP target in his next few appearances. I'll drop off here and see you on the next map. 2P will be completed in 9 turns because it's a defend map that ends on a player phase after the last enemy phase. 2-1 sees us hop over to Oma for a kill boss that is the second and last time that we lose turns to doing full recruitment. We control just Nephenee and Brom at the start, and this is the one occasion before the very end of the game that we don't have any EXP targets to manage. Not until the end of the map anyway. In fact, we'll intentionally ensure Nephenee doesn't level up in part 2. We need to wait until turn 5 to recruit a unit, and that gives Brom and Nephenee some time to grab a few villages. You can 2-turn the map otherwise. The only EXP optimization we can do at this point is to avoid killing the 4 militia on this map. They have AI where they randomly decide whether they will attack a unit in range, and they give some extra bonus EXP if spared. Nephenee comes with the skill Wrath and will stay in the north to grab the Ashera icon and eventually kill the boss. She also has a crit boost that will let her pull crit on any enemy she faces in part 2. Brom is an axe general who comes with the skill Disarm, a proc skill that forcibly unequips the enemy's weapon. We actually will put Disarm to use in this LTC, so get excited for that, though it won't be Brom wielding it at the time. Here he'll run through the south to grab a couple more villages, and will eventually recruit Heather, the only unit other than Aran who costs turns to recruit. Either Brom or Nephenee need to talk to her to recruit her. Since there's not much to comment on this map itself, I'll talk about Heather. Heather is a rogue similar to Soth, though her promotion isn't story locked. Of the 3 infantry on this map, Heather is surprisingly the one with the most long-term relevance to this run, because she comes with several unique traits that let her shape full recruitment FE10, and I would argue that she is truly the mascot of this run, even if her contributions are very specific. She is the only thief unit the Grail Mercs will get in part 3, which lets her yank some nice gear. Being a rogue also gives her the same improved terrain properties that Soth has, which will leverage on some maps. Her base stats aren't the best, and being locked to knives hampers her, but rigging will make up the difference. She's also one of the few units who has to care about weapon rank. She comes with C knives, and we want her to have A knives by part 4. She also comes with Pass. Heather's presence in part 2 lets her access some uncontested EXP, and we will be training her for part 4. Nephenee will kill the boss, and that'll be 2-1 in 5 turns. Heather made us wait around, but she's immediately going to start making her name by helping with a brand new turn save. 2-2 is a map where one of our new units, Lucia, needs to seize. Lucia is a swordmaster who guest stars on this map before disappearing until part 4, where she'll do a little work. She has good base stats for now and comes with the parity skill, which negates extraneous factors to battle like skills and terrain when activated on player phase. Now that we have access to the base, we immediately start pouring bonus EXP to Heather, our one EXP target for this map. The other new units are Lethe and Mordecai. Lethe is a cat and suffers from the infamous cat gauge. Mordecai is a tiger who comes with the smite skill, and he will mostly contribute as a heavy shove bot. 2-2 is a fog of war map, so Lethe and Mordecai's status as beast Lagoose will give them good vision. Leanne and Neil Lucci rejoin us on the map. Bird Lagoose, in contrast to the beast, have notoriously poor vision, and in fact they lose vision on transforming, so Neil Lucci cannot even spot an enemy adjacent to him after he uses his Lagoose stone. As such, we had Lucia trade with him so she could spot her target herself. We have Mordecai pick up Lucia so he can hand her off to Neil Lucci and then smite him. Leanne is a square shot of reaching the dance spot, so we need one of the infantry from the last map to shove her. It has to be a 7-move unit, as you'll see on turn 2, so we'll have Nephenee do that job. With this smite, Neil Lucci can drop Lucia 7 squares from the seize point. We then need to form a wall to the right of Leanne to ensure that the enemies don't clog up the area on turn 2, which requires one of Brom or Nephenee to stand on that particular spot. Lethe completes the wall by using a Lagoose stone, since she needs to get involved in combat on the next turn. Finally, our last infantry unit needs to bait over a soldier who's in the north, because he otherwise runs over to the right and will get in the way on turn 2. We have Heather be this unit because she can get a little EXP this way. The reason we needed to aggressively drop Lucia forward turn 1 is that there are a lot of enemies in that area who will clog up the narrow pathways if they're left alive. Some of them have 2 range, but because of how we drop Lucia and the enemy movement order, the way ends up staying clear. We want Neil Lucci to get hit by the Bowgun Warrior, who will get him down to exactly 1 HP, which will activate Wrath, which we need on turn 2. One of the archers over on the left drops a torch, but we don't have the time to get it in this clear. There's also a stealable secret book which we have to skip, and a hidden discipline manual in the bottom right part of the map. This level up is needed so Heather can actually one-round the soldier who will attack her. On turn 2, we want Lethe and Mordecai to charge forward as our most mobile units. The Oma gang need to shove Leanne 3 squares so that she can actually reach them, and the way the enemies moved, we can sneak her those squares. Mordecai getting attacked turn 1 lets him transform turn 2 with just Olivia Grass instead of needing to burn a Lagustone use. He needs to transform to spot the boss and the general in front of him, who is honestly the real boss of this map. That general has really high stats, including luck, meaning the only units who can one-round him are Steel Greatlands Nephenee, Rat Neolucci, and Lucia. This is why we needed Neolucci to get into Wrath range on turn 1. We mineral the stats of all the enemies on this map, which is why Neolucci is able to just barely kill this general. Lethe will clean up the boss, and Lucia will seize to complete 2-2 in 2 turns. Two-3 is a Seize map, and this time the lead unit is the Paladin Geoffrey. He comes with the Paragon skill, but sadly he has terrible availability and will not really do anything in this run. His subordinate Kieran is a bit more important. We need a couple of extra Paladins for a map in part 4, and Kieran is a great candidate for that since he can use forged 1-2 range hand axes and only needs to gain 1 level to hit the stat thresholds for that map in a rigged context. He comes with the skill Gamble. The other Paladins, Astrid and Makalov, are less relevant. They each do a single job in part 4, but otherwise just serve as distractions on this map. Astrid has Paragon, but again she won't really be putting it to use. The sole infantry unit we get for this map is Danved, who has a crit boost as a halberdier. Being an infantry unit means he can be carried by the mounts, and that will let him contribute on this map. Marcia also rejoins us from 2p, and is naturally the main EXP target we have deployed. On this map, any enemy units we leave alive become extra pets, so we want to avoid killing enemies with units other than Kieran and Marcia as much as we can. We will also buy a killer axe for a map much further down the line. We give Marcia some bonus EXP. To seize in 4 turns, we need 3 units to get to the end of the map. Kieran to break open the door, Geoffrey to seize, and a boss killer who naturally will be Marcia. However, there's also a droppable Speedwings near the end of the map for which we'll carry Danved forward. We have Marcia do this because this will get all the nearby enemies who can to go for her, which will let her farm a full level of EXP on this enemy phase. We get a number of yellow NPC units to command, but they're mostly a distraction, so we will have them stay back. There's honestly not that much to comment on this map because it's just a straightforward march to the finish line. This is a great illustration of how the most efficient ways to farm EXP are highly correlated with unreliability. Even if you had a perfect luck patch, for instance, there are situations where the optimal way to farm EXP would require not having perfect luck. Though in this case, obviously, like freezing the RNs is basically doing the same job as a perfect luck patch. We do want to ensure the shot spear ends up on Marcia at the end of the map, and that we convoy warp the Brave Lance. We will also convoy warp some of the expensive treasure on this map. That one axe fighter who's in the way needs to be dealt with by Kieran on turn 2. Geoffrey grabs the hidden arm scroll on turn 2. Astrid and Makalov picked up a couple of bishops just so they could more effectively play distraction. Those two warriors have crossbows and they are scarily accurate on Marcia. We charge Astrid forward to distract one of the cavaliers. The Halberdier who drops the Speedwings charges on turn 3, which will let Danved kill him up the ledge on turn 4. You could maybe route out that one kill of the Myrmidon by the yellow unit, but honestly I did not care enough to micro-optimize this map. It's quite boring and I just wanted it to be done to move on further to the more interesting maps. We just clean up and that'll be 2-3 in 4 turns. 2 endgame is a defend or kill boss, and you know what we'll be going for since this is an LTC. One-turning this map is pretty straightforward. The real interesting part is how we will maximize our EXP at one turn. Elincia gets her PRF, the Amiti, which is a brave sword with a lot more might. It's locked to her inventory. We also get a physics staff. Much like with one endgame, we need to think about sending resources over to the Part 3 army. Haar, Brom, Nephenee, and Heather will all join the Grail Mercs at the earliest opportunity, while Lethe and Mordecai will join a little later, so we load up their inventories with all the loot we can. We're joined by a new unit, Calill. She's a fire sage with all right bases, and notably she comes with a meteor tome. However, the Grail Mercs actually do not have any uses for a siege tome, whereas the Crimean Royal Knights do in Part 3. I assumed I needed to get Calill to Tier 3 for Part 4 in this run, but that turned out to be unnecessary. While we can deploy everyone on this map, the ledges and the yellow units really get in the way turn 1, and it's surprisingly hard to actually farm EXP efficiently. Heather's 7 move and better terrain properties let her actually get to the center of the map to pick up the kills over there. We also want to get Elincia a physic use and maximize Haar's EXP. The other units we have will just help shove our key players into position. Marcia isn't available in preps, but she shows up over there right at the start of the map. The other Crimean Royal Knights would also eventually show up on this map, but will be done long before the turn when they would appear. We gave Heather some bonus EXP, because much like with 2-2, she needs to level up in order to most efficiently farm EXP on this map. And her combat over there gives Elincia her staff target. Haar equips the shot axe, and with it he can double crit the boss on the enemy phase. Marcia will just try to farm EXP for herself. We wanted her to have the short spear so she can 2-round KO that general to get the nullify manual. Because having resources is better than not having resources. Elincia would get Leanne out of there, and will canto over to a spot where Nephenee can trade the physic away from her, since we definitely want to send that over to the Grail Mercs. You'll notice some of the enemies will refuse to attack our units even if they are in range. Those stairs do count as an elevation advantage over Marcia. Haar definitely needs to crit everything to save shot axe uses because we have an important application for them later in part 3. Haar can also pick up the energy drop. The boss drops a tomahawk and that'll be 2 endgame in 1 turn. However, part 2 was quite short, so this video is going to keep going into part 3. Alright, we're in part 3, reunited with the famed Grail mercenaries. The Grail mercs are at the highest stat stratum of the armies we've controlled so far, and that means that the majority of our part 4 combat units will come from their ranks. Since the entirety of the Grail mercs have all shown up at once, I'll have to go over them during quiet moments in the clear. 3 Prologue is a map where we need an NPC, Skirmir, to arrive at the top right. Skirmir is a future playable unit who controls an entire army of green units who start off in a different spot, and both they and we will have to face some lines of enemies before we can meet up close to the end of the map. The Lagoos aren't much for tactics, however, and we will need to help them out alongside some RNG control for the fastest clear. We will reassign Provoke to Soren from Shinon so he can maximize his combat exposure on this map. The Lagoos army that Skirmir leads will show up in several future maps in part 3. We're in Fog of War again. On turn 1 player phase, we have enough leeway that we don't need to break out the crits immediately. We have 2 paladins, Oscar and Titania. Titania is the more relevant EXP target since we want one good paladin for part 4, and she comes at a high enough base level that she can comfortably hit tier 3. But having the worst deployment slot on this map means she's not going to be able to lead the charge, and in fact isn't going to gain any EXP on this map. She comes with a counter skill. Oscar, on the other hand, is going to be the other filler paladin alongside Kieran with his access to forged javelins later on. With his good starting spot, he'll be trying to move his full move on each turn in order to lead the charge. On turn 1, after we clear out the nearby enemies, we want to boost Soren forward so he can clean up most of the enemies nearby. Soren is the biggest star among all the anima users in this run. He can combine 2 different jobs quite effectively. We need a rescue staff user with at least 30 magic for 3 endgame, and we need an archsage with very high magic for the Grail army in part 4 to wield siege stones. In fact, his bond support with Ike will come into play as well. Many of the Grail mercs have bond supports, but we only take advantage of a couple of them in this run. On this map, Soren is one of the most effective units because he can be shoved by any infantry, and he has access to 1 to 2 range, especially including Thunder, which lets him crit pretty much anything he faces. He comes with the Adept skill. One mage will attack Ike due to the lack of 2 range, but we can live with that. On the right, the generic Lagoos cannot pull crit on the enemies on this map. On the subject of Ike, he's the lord of the GMs and comes with decent base stats and a PRF, the Etard, a good sword with some innate crit. The 3 armies of this game have been pretty isolated so far, but you know they're not going to be that way forever, and Ike will eventually lead an offensive against Dayan. At that point, we will need to defeat him for 1 LTC clear, which is why the title of this video says he won't have perfect growths. We intentionally did not give him HP transfers, and his HP and res growths are going to be set to 0% for most of part 3. We do let him get his res transfer, and we'll give him 1 res level up, since we can afford that much slack. He, of course, is the real star of the Telly saga, and so he'll be an EXP target. He wants to gain 4 levels unpromoted to cap out his speed. Skirmir on turn 1 will always stop to attack one of the nearby enemies instead of making progress, but no matter where he moves, he'll be within 4 full moves from the arrive point. Skirmir himself has solid stats and can one-round anything he attacks, since he's a unit who's meant to be part of your army in part 4. His Lieutenant Ranulf is also pretty good, capable of one-rounding any enemy who isn't a general, especially given he gets a strength transfer. There are 2 Ballistae on this map, and they have fixed attack independent of strength, much like crossbows. We have 2 snipers to man them, and we want Rolf to use the first one, because that job ends up getting more EXP than the user of the second Ballista. And yes, Rolf's EXP is going to matter. He's not a long-term unit, but he needs to grow 2 levels before the end of the next map. He comes with a PRF bow. Shinon being Sniper 2 lets him shove that mage who would be too heavy for Rolf. This lets Ike himself move further before killing him. Shinon, despite his significantly better bases, is actually the least flashy sniper in this run. He will help out as an infantryman in the early Grail Mercs maps and will kill 1 enemy in part 4. The first use of a Ballista is to weaken a Halberdier. The Lagoos don't have access to 2 range and can only 2-round Halberdiers, and they move after enemy phase, so if we don't weaken one, they won't be able to break past them on this turn. On the left, we continue our advance by getting Mia to the front. Much like Oscar, Mia is a filler EXP target. We want a filler infantry unit to do a couple of jobs in part 4, and she only needs 4 levels to cap out her relevant tier 2 stats. The Swordmaster's crit boost and reasonably good skill cap will let her punch over her weight. Soren will get shoved 3 times so he can make it to a particular spot and kill the sniper Mia spotted. That fire sage appears to be stationary. The last cat to move actually clogs up the spot we want Skrymir to go to next, so we need to arrange for them to get 1% crit by the enemy. On turn 3, our next obstacle is a couple of stationary enemies guarding a choke point to the north, so we have Boyd and Ike clear out the way, with Geoffrey providing some shove assistance. Geoffrey has pretty good bases, but his primary use in this run is being one of the few infantry who can shove Ike early on. Ike has bulked up a lot from his FE9 days and is not as shovable as he used to be. Ike's buddy Boyd is the star infantry of this run. Since mounts can't carry each other, many clears will involve a mount carrying an infantry forward, and Boyd with his great strength cap and access to Axis will be the logical choice, which will let him grow a lot. We get to bring one Bayark of our choice to the endgame maps, and Boyd is the logical candidate, given how much you're going to see him grow. Rolf's next job is to kill the sniper the Lagoose weakened, since he won't kill himself and would distract Skrymir, who moves very early on Lagoose phase if he has a legal option to attack, or to move closer to the arrive point. Shinon finally gets to the second ballista and he chips down another halberdier to create a weak point for the Lagoose army to rush through. Soren will once more take the lead spot, and after he kills a mage we will have Oscar take away his stones. A completely unequipped unit with Provoke is too juicy of a target for a sniper to the south, which will bait him away to give the Lagoose more room to work. Titania will pick up Boyd, so he can eventually face the boss of this map. As mentioned earlier, we wanted that cat to die to a 1% crit. The last two units we haven't talked about yet are Riss and Mist, the healers of the GMs. Riss is the sole light magic user the Grail Mercs have, and as you might guess, he's the reason the Dawn Brigade sent over a forged light dome. We won't see much of him in part 3, but he will have his day in the limelight in 3 endgame, and as a matter of fact, we specifically don't want him to grow before that map. Mist can use swords and staves unpromoted this time around, and comes with the PRF, the Fleury, a strong 1-2 range sword with crit. Mist is however held back by really bad stat caps. Like in FE9, she promotes to a mounted class, and she will actually account for more than half the uses of the rescue staff in part 4. She's going to be an important EXP target, though we have to be careful not to promote her before a certain point. On turn 4, we've met up with the Lagoose army, and there's just one more barricade of enemies. Rolf just gets some chip EXP there. Shinon will pick off a Fire Sage who would probably want to attack the Lagoose. We will have Soren once more stand at the front to clean up all the mobile enemies near the boss, with Titania bringing him his equipment. There is a crossbow warrior who ends up attacking Soren instead of the nearby Lagoose, and I don't really know why, but I'm not complaining. Boyd is given to Oscar, who will drop him forward. On the subject of coins, I should mention that one of the things that transfers does, other than giving units extra stats, is that any kinds in Path of Radiance at the end of the game in Convoy there get transferred over to Radiant Dawn. And as a result, we have 18 kinds in Convoy. We're not going to use any of them though, but this shows how many kinds are available in case someone has an idea for a strategy that might require a kind forge. As a matter of fact, there are some kinds in the run that could theoretically be obtained at LTC base. They would just cost some EXP, and so I forewent them, but keep an eye out for those. With all the nearby enemies dead by the end of turn 4 enemy phase, Skirmir and the Lagoos will rush forward to expose the boss area and even start working on the generals. On turn 5, we will clean up the boss area, getting Boyd in front of the boss to complete 3 prologue in 5 turns. The boss drops a crossbow, and that'll be a very important weapon for the next map. Three Prologue played out like a route map, while 3-1 is an actual route map. This is our next turn save, thanks to Cheeky for pointing out the possibility. We move counter to Mist to let her get some extra EXP, and give Titania Adept so she can double her damage output. I forgot to mention it earlier, but Mist has Miracle. The star of this clear is going to be Rolf. Rolf can be shoved by all our infantry, and starts in the best starting spot, and with the crossbow we got last map, has 1 to 2 range. His crit boost is a sniper, will let him pull displayed crit on all the enemies. Titania needs Adept to kill an enemy in the way, and because she needs to punch through some generals later in the map. We shove Rolf 7 times, so he can get in the face of a stationary general on the right side of the map. We are careful about how we arrange our shoves to ensure that the enemies will attack units we want to give EXP to. We have a couple of yellow units on this map, Lethe and Lyre. We just want them to stay out of the way. While we're shoving Rolf, we have Provoke Soren be the final shover, so he can stand in a specific spot and bait a longbow sniper on the other side of the wall to put himself in our attack range for the next turn. Oscar and Boyd are free, so they rescue drop Mist forward. As you can see, the crossbow is not that strong, and Rolf can't one-round some enemies. Thankfully, the way the enemy phase plays out, his path will stay clear on turn 2. Miss does appreciate the EXP she gets. The reason we gave her counter was because she couldn't damage this general, but counter lets her do some damage to gain EXP, which Boyd will also appreciate on the next turn. That sniper going for Soren over the one range locked units is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. We had to equip the Iron Sword on Nia to get that Halberdier to go for her. With that, Rolf gains his second level up, which lets him reach 23 attack speed with his transfers. With Mist's counter chip, Boyd can kill the general with a Killer Axe crit. Shinon and Titania will grab the two villages. The reason Rolf wanted to hit 23 attack speed is because he needs to enemy face a stationary halberdier from one range due to the fog, and he needs to double crit him to kill him. The other enemies he left on low HP who can reach him will go for him over Titania, which is unfortunate. Boyd has to equip the Shard Axe due to the Shard Spear Halberdier, and since he doesn't double, we get him to kill all the enemies by relying on his bond support with his brother, Oscar, to crit everything. Rolf won't do anything of consequence after this for the rest of the run, but snipers do have a good showing in this LTC compared to a lot of other FEs, don't they? I'll let the enemy phase play out, that'll be 3-1 in 2 turns. After a couple of exciting clears, we have a simple kill boss. Ilyana, Haar, Brom, Nephenee, and Heather join the GMs, bringing the best they could smuggle from Dane and Crimea, along with the merchant twins who give us access to forging. This chapter has a special gimmick, the silver card. It's only available in the base of this chapter, and we will take advantage of it to buy a bunch of stock weapons at half price. We overbuy, but that's not really a problem since we can sell the goods back for no loss later on. We also get a slight discount on forges, but we're only going to forge a steel knife for Heather to use for now. I do eventually forge a fire tome for part 4. That would be optimal to acquire here, so that's a possible money improvement. On this map, we give Titania celerity so she can go off to kill the boss, Adept to Nephenee for a minor EXP optimization, Paragon on Haar for the only time in this run, and Provoke on Boyd since we want to direct EXP to him. Mia takes Shade just as insurance, it's probably not necessary, and Heather takes Counter to augment her crummy offensive output. Something I should mention is that Boyd and Mist want to build up an A support before 3 endgame for a special conversation that will get us a Spirit Dust. The Grailmarks have their own separate bonus EXP pool, but we're actually not really going to draw from it before it starts merging with other bonus EXP pools. You might notice that we intentionally undeployed Riss. This is a really minor optimization. Riss does not need to grow stats at all, and he currently is at best biorhythm. I benched him to keep him at best biorhythm for the maps he will eventually contribute in. Keeping Nephenee at 1.99 in part 2 let her level up turn 1 here to give Mist a turn 1 staff target, while also letting Haar equip a hand axe for enemy face to maximize his EXP gain. And she does all this without actually requiring us to crack open the bonus EXP barrel. We gave Boyd Provoke, so all of the enemies near the center bottom of the map would end up going for him. Since he is the most pressing EXP target among the infantry, outside of Soren, but Soren is a special case. The reason we sent the physics staff over is, of course, to optimize Mist's EXP gain. And in general, the physics staff is extremely powerful for grinding up EXP on staffers. There is a bolting sage in the top right part of the map, but we can't get to him in 2 turns, and Heather doesn't have the strength to nick it at this point anyway. Fear not though, Heather will have her moments later in this run. You could get a little extra chippy XP on Titania if she spares one of the enemies that she kills on turn 1 enemy phase. People who've watched a lot of my LTCs will know that kill boss maps just really do not have much to talk about. This is the only chance Haar gets to just go off to the side and farm EXP with Paragon, because celerity is almost always going to be on him in the future maps. On turn 2, we'll just clean up, and Titania will get in range of the boss with the Tomahawk equipped to kill him with a crit. Heather needs the extra damage from counter in order to kill the one wyvern that she attacks on this player phase. That'll be 3-2 in 2 turns. It's time for the iconic Supplies Burning map. 3-3 requires the units to arrive and spend a player phase action at 6 supplies, and we also have several items we want to visit some tents for. We finally unlock some supports. We buy the Flourish skill, which we'll use to squeeze out some extra EXP on a couple of occasions, and we'll combine it with the Disarm skill to safely set up steals for Heather in a couple of maps later in part 3. We put Celerity on Haar, Provoke and Adept on Mia, Shade and Savior on Oscar, Paragon on Boyd, Counter on Mist, and Pass on Soren. Some of the menuing is a little jank in this clear, but I did not have the patience to read a card because behind the scenes it requires a lot of memory editing and the like. For turn 1, Soren can get the door open, while Mia produces Mist's turn 1 staff target by clearing the general out of the way and getting hit in the process. We gave Mia Provoke to concentrate the enemies into her, and to get her to the best spot, we want Titania and Ike to rescue drop her forward. To do this correctly, we shove Ike 3 times with the only 3 units who can. Soren is rescued by Oscar since we need him very far forward. Heather chips down a halberdier to feed the mist, but unfortunately she won't be able to kill the other one in a single round of combat. Heather hit B knives there. Haar will carry Boyd to the top part of the map since we need an extra unit over there to get everything done. In general, get used to seeing the team of Haar and Boyd. We have Mia intentionally leave that halberdier alive to gain chip EXP. Turn 2 sees a senator spawn in with a bodyguard. The senator has a droppable Ashera icon, but sparing him gives us extra bonus EXP. We can achieve both at the same time by shoving Heather once to let her steal his treasure. Oscar drops Soren there so he can clean up the mobile enemies in that area, while Titania picks up Mia. White has the Tomahawk equipped so he can crit enemies that go for him on his enemy phase to keep his way clear. The exact positioning of Haar and Boyd was determined through trial and error to make sure that Boyd would be able to get to where he needed to get to, even without access to pass. The reason we gave Soren pass was so that he could chip down this general while still being far forward, to let Ike equip the Wind Edge for maximum EXP on this enemy phase. Titania gives Mia to Oscar before cantoing up to the Sage. She's going to be responsible for dealing with the supplies that you see on screen. Haar is free to visit this tent on this turn to grab the Hammern staff, which shows up many chapters before the rescue staff. Heather can easily reach the supplies in the bottom right, but she instead runs off to the center to cover another side objective. Mist will instead have to grab that tent, but she cannot afford to use Physic on this turn because nobody is there who can trade the Florite back to the top of her inventory. Geoffrey will burn the bottom left supplies so that he'll be free to grab the Blossom skill from the tent nearby. Oscar started from the best starting spot, and using his full move every turn, he can drop Mia in 2 range of a stationary general to enemy face him. This requires Mia to proc Adept once and triple crit him with the Wind Edge. Shinon is usually used for this job in most LTCs because he can use the Killer Bow, which has more crit and has higher might, but Mia is used here for 2 reasons. One is just the fact that Mia is a more relevant EXP target, and the other is that we want to set up a 6-use Wind Edge for the next map to optimize Ike's EXP gain. Haar stays in the north so he can enemy face crit the boss for a bag of EXP and to get us the second copy of Shade, which we're always glad to have more options. Haar also hits level 15 on this enemy phase, capping his strength in tier 2. He's ready to promote. That sniper appears to be stationary. Right now, Ike's resistance growth is set to 100%, because he can afford to gain exactly one resistance level as previously mentioned. With this level up, Ike reaches 44 HP and 10 resistance, and he will stay there all the way up until the end of part 3. On turn 4, we finish up everywhere. Soren and Ike needed to be brought up there so they could shove Mia twice to reach the top left tent. Oscar is a square shot. Oscar will instead grab the Master Crown for Haar. Moving south, Brom needs to shove Mist once so she can reach the bottom right supplies. The reason Heather ran to the center was so that with the help of Pass, she could steal the white gem on the senator who just showed up, who has the same gimmick as the other one. That'll be 3-3 in 4 turns. "3-4 is a double arrive map. Haar will take our shiny new Master Crown and will be the first unit to promote to Tier 3. He gains stun, and because it is a mastery skill that only costs 25 capacity, he actually effectively gains 5 more capacity to go up to 25 discretionary capacity. This is the case with all flyers and makes them better than cavalry, who are stuck at 20 capacity. With this newfound freedom, he will take Pass and Savior for this map. Boyd will add Flourish to the Paragon he already had, and Mia will turn in her Adept since she no longer needs it. I guess I didn't acknowledge it earlier, but Mia came with Vantage. We get the option to buy another copy of Mist's Flurried here, and in hindsight, this was unnecessary. The first copy is enough to last us until the end of the game. Going to the map recruits a number of Legus to the Grail Mercs. Lethe and Mordecai rejoin from part 2, bringing more items over. Lyre is a joke unit who does nothing in this run, but in incomplete recruitment, I believe she can help save a turn on a particular map. Kaisa is a tiger who is a slightly inferior Mordecai. Kaisa has less con when transformed, and the one time Kaisa gets uniquely used is an occasion where we specifically cannot use Mordecai for the job. Kaisa comes with the Quick Claw skill, which is a proc skill that can let a Beast Legus retaliate at 2 range with a 0 might counterattack. Ranulf is the big new face. He has solid stats and will be force applied through the rest of part 3. On this map, we need Ike and Ranulf to separately arrive at the top of the map. Ranulf starts with a full gauge, so he's ready to go on this particular map, sidestepping the usual Legus issue of being slow starters. We give him Celerity and Vantage, though the latter is irrelevant, and then with a Smite from Mordecai, he can reach the arrive point by just moving his full move every turn, as long as he can stay transformed. There are some Legus on this map for story reasons, but they're rather an annoyance, and we actually end up getting several of them killed, despite their survival being a Bexp incentive. Ranulf will use his movement to help rescue drop infantry forward so they can help clear out the way and farm EXP for themselves. Haar unequips himself to draw all the nearby enemies to him and moves in a way that will ensure the nearby tiger will not eventually block Bide's way. On turn 2, we boost Ike forward further so he can kill the first Swordmaster who's standing in the way on the left. Soren was similarly dropped earlier so he could kill the Halberdier behind him. Titania hands off Heather to Ranulf so Heather can help clear the way later. This strategy is a tweak of a known one where Ranulf would normally take both Pass and Celerity. By doing this, we avoid unequipping Pass from Heather. Pass on Haar lets him fly through the pack of enemies he lured, and he can drop Mia forward so she gets access to that area. We intentionally let that tiger get crit by the Thunder Sage to ensure that the other enemies will go for Boyd. On turn 3, because Ranulf doesn't have Pass, we need to delete the 3 enemies in his way. Mia performs acute convoy work to ensure she will spare the Thunder Sage to the south of her, so we can feed him to Soren to hit level 10. Oscar hands off Ike to Haar so that the two of them can get to the boss area. We want Ike to have a 6 use wind edge so that he can use it to kill the 3 1-2 range enemies who move first, before switching to the Etard, which will let him punch through all the other enemies. On turn 4, we'll just clean up. We set things up so Ike gets to kill the boss. If we had done things a little differently, there's a coin we could have had Haar pick up instead of the useless second Etard. Heather will clear out Rolf's way again, and that'll be 3-4 in 4 turns. "3-5 is another easy kill boss map. Our new Beast Lookers friends are unavailable for story reasons, but we instead are joined by Raisin, the weakest of the Heron clan. Raisin has 6 move, Canto, and Flight, but can only refresh 1 unit at a time when he's untransformed. On transforming, he gains the ability to dance for 4 units at a time like Raphael, and has 8 move. Dancers are always very important in LTCs, and Raisin will be an important player in every map he's part of. Raisin is the only one of the herons who meaningfully benefits from transformation, so we will actually go out of our way to get him attacked to make that happen on a few occasions. We have to bench a single unit, and of course that unit will be Reese for the reasons discussed earlier. Haar will carry Boyd to the boss area to farm EXP with Paragon with a dance. Everybody else is just concerned with farming EXP for themselves. Titania takes Adept so that much like 3-1, she can punch through some generals on the right. Heather will kill a single enemy and take damage in the process to set up a physic target for Mist. Mist will take the counter skill and go to the left to kill a few enemies there. However, with how weak she is, Mist will not be able to one-round the halberdiers there unassisted, which is why she needs some help. Shinon and Rolf chip down a couple of halberdiers into her kill range, and Mia will chip the third one. Soren gets to relax here since he can't do anything until he promotes. We draw Boyd in the spot that would maximize the EXP he farms, and he has a 20 use hand axe so he can double and one round 10 enemies before switching to the tomahawk to kill the boss. I'll let the EXP farming play out, and that'll be 3-5 in one turn. See you next time!